sometimes there's a foot pursuit. So people were talking about one of the great, national level collegiate distance runners. And I think you surprised some criminals. Is that what I remember from the story?
You promised we would not talk about.
Mike Scannell, after so many years, I caught up with you, and I'm so freaking excited because right now you're on top of the world, and you're gonna share this energy and excitement. We were mentioning off camera that this is your calling in life, and we're gonna talk about the incredible success at the Paris Olympic Games by your athlete, Grant Fisher, and how this whole journey happened. But I said, let's just jump right into it because we saw this dude claim 2 bronze medals in the distance events, making history for the United States. Welcome to the show, man.
Well, Brad, it has been a long time and we've been friends forever. It's wonderful to see you. I really appreciate coming on your show and sharing this. And, I don't know if I'm on the top of the world, but I might be second because Grant is super, super happy. And it was really a long-term project. And, he never wavered in his goals. He set them out there and shared them with me, and he actually shared them with others. And that's not an easy thing to do. Put yourself, out there and put a target on your back and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what I want to do. And he did it. So I'm a passenger in the car, and I'm a really, really happy passenger.
Well, that's a great attitude, and I think it speaks to your well-balanced, holistic approach to coaching. Because sometimes I object when the coaches are kind of taking the limelight and using a lot of we statements like we won the medal and all that, and it can turn into sometimes some dysfunctional dynamics. You see that in other sports where the athletes feel too much pressure and they crack, and sometimes I feel like, well, what's going on with their support system where the athlete had so much pressure to win the gold or die? They're lacking perspective all around them too, it seems like.
Yeah, Grant is such an individual and unique guy that we started this project, and I didn't say this is what I'll do for you. I said, what can I do for you? Grant, what do you want from me? What do you want? And then when we all laid it out, I said, I'll clear my plate. I don't care. You've asked for this, you've asked for that. You think this is the right way to go, and I'll clear my plate for this project. And that was, almost a year ago. And honestly, it truly is Grant, and I truly am a passenger. And it has always been, I will help, but you will drive. And I will do whatever it takes, and you're the race car driver. I'm just a mechanic, and I'm good with that. I think you need a really good mechanic. There's no doubt about it.
Mm.
I think absolutely you need a good mechanic, but also you need a race car driver, and Grant's a race car driver.
It's interesting that we're going here with the conversation because I was also going to ask you what we commonly see these days in the elite scene are these high profile teams where there's a bunch of resources behind it with a big sponsor. We're familiar with the Nike teams and the On team, and that team atmosphere I think has a lot of benefits, but it also seems like there's the potential for getting into the team dynamic that is so destructive for collegiate athletes, where the system chews them up and spits them out. So you maybe could talk about the compare and contrast from what's a elite team experience like with all the bells and whistles and the facilities, but sort of a different approach than you and Grant have taken with this kind of one-on-one approach.
Well, I love the team approach. I think I like the coaches, the Dathan Ritzenheims of the world, the Jerrys of the world, the guys that are involved in those big, large teams. They have good coaches, the Pete Julians of the world. They're good coaches and they're good teams, and they work very well. So I think there's a huge benefit to that. And if not anything else, just sharing the Olympics experience. So Grant goes to BTC, and there's other guys in the team already that have medals. And so just the on an easy run, talking about what it's like. How was it at the Olympics? What is the warm up like? What's the call room situation like? What are you allowed to do here? How long are you sequestered? All of those things that give him a visual of what it's going to be like when he is there. Those are very, very helpful things. So I like that approach. That approach is not for everybody. I mean, Cole Hawker went back to his coach last year as well. And Cole Hawker arguably had a great year, right? I mean, you can't argue with a gold medal. So I think at different times in different athletes' careers and progression, they just have to pick the right solution at the time. And you have to go to the NCAA system. You have to, and it is a very good system. There's a lot of competitive guys that all want to be very good, and to be around that environment is healthy. And like you said, sometimes it's not, but there is definitely a place for all of that. So I support the large team and the large group. I think it's in our day, Brad, we didn't have that option. We were
Mm.
all on our own, and I think we made our own small groups. But for those companies to get behind these groups, I think is great. But like you said, this year Grant made that change, and the focus was 100% Grant Fisher. So in this year, with what went on, in hindsight, I can say that was a good change for him.
I can't argue. Yeah. Uh, that's funny. I mean, there's so much, armchair opining, especially it seems like in track and field for some reason, where everyone's, has a better recommendation than the athletes who are excelling. So you cross the finish line, you can shut down any potential naysayers of who's this Mike Scannell guy? Why is he taking the reins with the greatest American distance runner? But I think what's also cool is like these things all should be seen as stepping stones, and you have to continue to try and grow and better yourself. And so your positive attitude is shining through. Like the collegiate experience is awesome, and then the Bowerman Track Club where Grant trained as a pro was awesome, and now he's having great success with the next stepping stone. And also in that was choosing a different place to live that was personally appealing for personal reasons, I suppose. And you can talk about that when I stop rambling. But I think that's the sign of a champion where you can't be getting into a rut just because you got to look for more opportunity in the future, and things change in your own life too, I suppose.
Yeah, and you have to consider. I don't want to use an athlete as a product, but you've got to consider that at this phase of that development of that career, let's say, at 18 years old, Grant needed this. At 22 years old, he needed that. At 27 years old, maybe he needed this. And so, maybe this was the change that he needed to excel. It worked. I don't know if this is the best. I've always held the belief that if I can benefit you, Brad, as a coach, then let's work together.
Hmm.
And Brad, if you decide that it's best for Brad to go to Johnny as a coach, then Brad, I'm going to support that decision. Go to Johnny and see if it works out. Maybe he has a different system that works better
Hmm.
for you. Maybe he has other ideas that work better for you. But really, it doesn't matter if you call me Coach Mike or, Coach Scannell. It doesn't matter what my name is. The real thing is, can I positively impact who you're going to be as a person and an athlete? And if that changes, because the target always changes, Brad, you're different today than you
Hmm.
were 40 years ago or 20 years ago, 30 years ago. That target changes. So maybe you need a different guy tomorrow. But for right now, Grant and I will continue to work together.
How did you get to this disposition? Did you have some great coaching experience, or did you have some negative ones in the collegiate system that you ran in your professional career? Because I wish all coaches would speak like this, and I see still the pervasiveness of some impure motivations with even great coaches in major sports.
Well, that is a very unique question that I will answer it as number one, everything I do coaching wise, I stole. I am not the greatest coach. I take a little bit of Brad Kearns and I take a little bit of whoever, name it,
Arthur Lydiard.
whatever.
Yeah.
I stole everything I do. I stole. And you can steal it too, Brad. If you like it, steal it. Go ahead. I answer your questions outright. I will. I'm an open book when it comes to like, what do you do this and why? The only reason I don't provide too much detail is because those armchair quarterbacks, they just yell at me, and I'm like, if
Mm.
you don't like it, don't do it. I'm not telling you to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But reality is, Brad, that I'm a coach that still learns, and I don't know everything. And if I don't know everything, I certainly can't know everything about you and or about somebody else and what's best for them. I try to do very, very good, but
Mm.
I know I am not the be all end all coach. I'm just a coach. So I want to be a good coach, and I still change my systems all the time. But to think, just because of this result happened, I think maybe too often the egos get in the way of reality. And I have some unbelievable success stories beyond Grant Fisher.
Hmm.
And I think it's great, but everybody wants to talk about Grant because, he excelled at the athletic level unbelievably, which I'm fine chatting about. But really, to answer your question, unfortunately, I would say that a lot of that is ego driven when people wind up maybe taking too much credit for the end product.
I wonder if is there some secretiveness that's still around amongst the elite athletes? I mean, you're saying you're an open book, so if I asked you like, what are Grant Fisher's best threshold workouts at altitude, would you share that with the world,
I,
or do you have to keep a little bit of
Unfortunately, I don't. You can't do Grant Fisher's workouts, Brad. If you,
right?
you come here now, we'll put you through one. We'll see how it
Yeah.
goes for you. But um, you know, I'm very scientifically based. There's no doubt about it. Grant wanted that as a change, so I've
Mm.
been testing lactate and taking lactate for probably close to 40 years before it was popular, certainly. And Grant wanted a little more control over the outcome of workouts, and so we did that. And I can share workouts. I don't mind sharing workouts, but I really like to share the premise of workouts. Why did you do the tempo, Brad? And how many minutes did you do tempo? And at what effort level did you do the tempo? That's what's important to you, not that Grant did 3 times 2 mile today. I mean, it just isn't that important. But why did you do it? How did you do it? And what did you get out of it? That's what you need to know so that you can do the same thing for your body.
So you're very scientific based in your approach. You have the tools available to us now, like testing blood lactate. If listeners aren't familiar, this is something that you can even do during the workout. You can prick your finger and check these readings that are very important to what the training adaptation is. But I also want to ask, because I think this is where the magic comes through, especially with you and Grant and what's been achieved, is you also have sort of a real life or an intuitive element that you have to overlay every day and every workout.
That is true. So the science behind our workouts is well known and well laid out in every book you want to read. That's not the guessing part of it. The coaching aspect is the art aspect. When I look in his eyes in a workout, I want to know how hard is he working and how hard is he thinking. And then a lot of times I'll say, "Hey, this is what my eyes are telling me. What do you feel?" And then we might test to see if I'm right or not. And for him, in one day, we might test his blood 6 to 8 times in a workout. So we test fairly often. And the adjustments are very small, Brad. We're targeting really tight lactate numbers in a workout. So as the workout goes on, let's say our volume is 26 minutes today of this type of work. At 12 minutes, you're at this level. And at 18 minutes, you might be at a different level and we might have to adjust the pace or adjust
Mm.
the length of the interval. We adjust all sorts of things. Length of the interval down to like 15 seconds. So the interval might be 2 minutes, it might be 145, it might be 230. We adjust that. And then also the rest. We might adjust the rest 10 seconds, from 30 seconds to 40 seconds, depending on the day. And we might adjust the speed. We might by a tenth of a mile an hour on a treadmill, for example, or 4 seconds in a mile repeat. That is
Mm.
nothing. But at Grant's level, he can adjust a mile without a watch within 4 to 5 seconds per mile. You just tell him, hey, this is the new pace, and boom, he feels it, he knows it. And so then we use the lactate to verify what my eyes are telling me.
Mm. So just to get a little layperson friendly, we're talking about there's a familiar example of anaerobic threshold training where we know that correlates to a certain blood lactate level, but maybe you could give like a practical example of what you're trying to do with all that finger pricking during the workout. And this is only during the workout that you're testing lactate in particular, and you're also watching heart rate, or what other things are you testing?
So I do have several portable lactate analyzers. So we do that during the workout. And I will answer your question about lactate. You asked me two questions. The other thing is I also have a portable hematocrit and hemoglobin tester. So those are
Wow.
not very popular, and I won't even tell you where I
It's the
got it, why I
it's the
got it, but
Scannell 2000. You can
it's a
order it
yeah,
online
it's a
from
new
Mike's
and improved.
website. What the
Exactly, the new
heck,
and
man? I've
improved
never heard of
version.
that. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
well, and now you have. And so we utilize that not in training because that's something that occurs over time with the element of altitude training, which we believe is very important. And so that or that testing device we use out of training, but the lactate we use in training. Now, for your example, we like to target between 3.8 and 4.0 millimoles of lactate per liter of blood. Do you know these figures?
Right. That's anaerobic threshold has been correlated with 4.0 millimoles of
Okay,
accumulation of this. I guess you could call it a byproduct of energy production. A lot of
that's
people
right.
misunderstand that, but um,
And it's not a bad thing. It's just some of it gets recycled into the body, which is good, and some of it then gets stored, or you can't do anything with it, right? And so yes, we target that. So we will, for example, let's say we will try a workout, and I'll say, okay, the goal is tempo 4.0. Let's say it's 4.0. So we have found that at altitude or in Arizona in the heat, it's the same thing. We have to cut our tempos way back to between 9 and 12 minutes. And I do this right now with my Arizona people too. 9 and 12 minutes. Otherwise, the lactate climbs too fast. And so, for example, let's say you're running 5 minute pace at tempo pace. Your 5 minute pace right now. Now, if the weather is 43 degrees and it's a beautiful day with no wind, you could easily run 4 miles. No, straight away, 4 miles. And that's a staple for me is a 4 mile tempo. We cannot do that in Arizona because honestly, after just like I said, it's somewhere around 10 to 13 minutes. That starts really climbing. And now my workout is ruined. And so, boom, we run 9 minutes. Like I just gave you the example, we run 3 times 2 mile repeats. We run up to 9 minutes, or in Grant's case, it's very close. And then we take a short break and we do it again. We take a short break and we do it again. And that way, we are never crossing that line. We want to stay behind that line. So that's an example of how we use that in training. And we might, let's go back to my 5 minute pace guide, just in case, somebody's listening and wants to kind of associate it. We might go 5 minutes and 5 minutes for a 10 flat 2 mile on the first rep. And then depending on how it goes, wind really screws up your effort levels, by the way. So if it's a really windy day, we really have a hard time. We might go 10-20 on the second interval. We'll adjust immediately. We don't wait. We don't say, oh, try another one. We don't do that. If the level is too high, we adjust immediately within seconds. So that's how we use that tool, and we use it often.
if you're watching on video, when Mike said ruined the workout, I smiled and I was thinking back to and looking at you on the screen and thinking back to our days on the racing circuit in the 80s and 90s. And I'm also thinking this is why the athletes continue to progress and go so much faster, is they become smarter about their training. And I contend that I probably ruined a lot of workouts as perhaps you did too, by using that competitive intensity to work really hard and try to keep the same pace into the wind or in the summer heat in Arizona. And maybe you can just describe what that really means when how do you ruin a workout by, let's say you don't have your meters with you and you're just going with your competitiveness in the pack and I guess abusing the body in a way.
Um, it's very, very easy. Like the college, let's just go with the college system. The college
Mm.
system is really simple. I'll write your week right now, and then you're going to repeat it 52 times. On Monday, you're going to come out and warm up, and I'm going to kill you. On Tuesday, you're going to run easy. And on Wednesday, you're going to come out and warm up, and I'm going to kill you. And on Thursday, you're going to run easy. And then on Friday, I know this is going to be a shock, but you're going to warm up, and I'm going to kill you. That's the whole sit. And they just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. Well, my high school guys want to do that too, by the way. I coach high school. I don't know if you know
Mm.
that, but I coach high school guys. And the lactate analyzer, the best thing about it is I can show them, I can tell them, we're going to target 4.0 today. And I can show them you're at 5.6, you're slowing down.
Mm.
And what happens with the wind or other elements, and I do have guys run on the treadmill often because it eliminates all these elements that
Mm.
you have to deal with when you're out on a gravel road that's hilly or windy. It doesn't matter. It eliminates all this other stuff that goes on. But the bottom line is, with an analyzer, you can show them and say, wait a second, the purpose of today, the goal of today, and the outcome for today are being affected because you're not adjusting to what's going on outside of your body. You know, the wind is creating too much effort, and then it's not an even thing. I run a 200 with the wind and it's super easy, so my effort level goes down.
Mm.
Then I run a 200 against the wind, your effort level is 120% or whatever, and then you go with the wind. It's not a zero sum game. It doesn't work that way. You cannot do that. And once you start crossing the line into, like, say 6, 7, 8, once you get up into that part of the curve, honestly, it becomes exponential and you never recover. So when I say ruin the workout, I mean run too hard early and then try to adjust back, and it does not work so easy.
Mm.
You need to creep up from the easy side and touch it. Just touch the level and hang out right below the level. Once you start crossing, and really it's about 8, between 6 and 8 is when it really starts climbing quickly, and you ruin the workout at that level, in my opinion. There are days that we run at that level, Brad, but not the
Mm.
tempo day that we're describing.
Right, right. And there's a lot of ways to ruin the workout, like you describe, if it's hot, if it's at altitude. And then I suppose there's a third one where the athlete is just not um, well recovered, and that will also show up with higher than normal accumulations, even though they're running what they believe to be a pace that's normal, typical, and within their capacity.
Yeah, so that's, now you're asking another question, and that's, what kind of volume and load can you put on Brad so that he absorbs the training and is ready for the next session?
Mm.
And that is a really fun, that is a coaching line right there. How much can I give you so that we're going to get our work in today, but also you're going to be ready for Friday, right? That's the deal. How much load can I give you today so that you can recover for the next session? And that is, I call that absorbing the training. And if an athlete isn't absorbing the training, then you're right. They are too tired. And yes, that is an effect. Also, other things also affect that same thing. If you're sick, if your body's working too hard, it doesn't matter what the number says. If your lactate is 4.0 and your watch says 5.12 pace,
Mm.
honestly, it doesn't matter. You might have to run 5-minute pace in 3 days. Now, it doesn't vary quite that much, but if you're sick, it would, right? You would have to run 5:20 pace and get the same effort out, the same benefits to the system out, but your numbers don't match. And so it's a really good tool for guys that just are grinders. I mean, it's a really good tool. And there are a lot of grinders out because,
Mm.
every day of my running career until I was 26 years old, every day ran as hard as I could. I mean, if you gave me a workout, it was just, as hard as I could run. I mean, 24 quarters. I did that many times in college, 24 times 400, and just nail. Well, Brad, you know I was a runner, right?
Of course, yeah. Listeners, this guy was, I mean, I would say you're the fastest runner that's ever done a duathlon. And so you pretty much messed up all our races, and I was scared to race you because I knew I was going to suffer like never before, uh, hoping to, make up some ground on the bike. But you were the torture guy in the pack for sure.
Yes, I have vivid memories of you soliciting other riders to drop me in the bike. I
Come on
recall.
now.
Right,
soliciting other soliciting people to slow down the pack on the first run of the run bike run duathlon.
yeah.
So
And
if one is not equipped with the technology, will heart rate reveal these things pretty accurately in terms of, identifying, let's say your anaerobic threshold heart rate is 153 or whatever you got your fancy test at the health club one day. Can you carry that with you and train pretty well by heart rate alone, which is more accessible, I'd say?
yeah, I would say it's more accessible as well. And the answer is absolutely yes. So, and it's a great device, but you have the thing about all these toys and tricks and devices is you've got to listen to it. So a lot of people wear the
Oh,
heart rate monitor.
wait, could we pause there and hit 15-second rewind for people? Oh, wait, I have all the tech I need. Oh, I got to listen to it? Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
I've got
Coach
to
Mike.
listen to it because if you believe the tech is accurate, and I believe most heart rate monitors are pretty darn good these days, then pay attention to it. And so, it's not that big of a deal, but a lot of people want to be coached by their watch or by Strava or what they post later. You've got to listen to what's best for your body. And a heart rate's a great way to do that.
So I'm going to ask you about the carefully laid plan that you and Grant set up. I've listened to or read some other stuff where you're sitting down in the coffee shop and writing a plan from day one all the way to the Olympics. So you're writing these huge long-term plans. Tell us about the details there. And then also my backup question is, how often do you have to deviate from that plan with an elite athlete who's living and breathing training?
So the way that worked, that's a true story, by the way. We sat down in a coffee shop and we started with the premise, what can I do for you? And that is exactly what I said to him. We sat there for hours and I told him what my philosophies were on training. And we talked about, what percentage of this volume should this be? What percentage of this, should be? And I did want him to start at 90 miles a week. That's true. That's been out there. I have no problem telling you that. And so then once that session was over, I said, do you want me to write the plan? He said, yes. So it probably took me a week. So I wrote the plan in three phases, one through the 10 in March, one through Olympic trials, June 30th, and one through August 10th, the final in the Olympic Games.
When was the
And
sit down? When was the sit down meeting?
I don't know. It was
So
probably September, October. I
yeah,
don't
so
know.
we're talking like an 8 or 9 month build to the Olympics, or
Yes,
10 or
yes,
11 month build. Okay, so
yeah.
that's when you first we should jump in a little bit where you coached Grant in high school, and then he went his way to Stanford and the professional running teams that we talked about, and so you had this sit down meeting to kind of reunite and go for this incredible Olympic goal.
Right. And so at that point, Grant had known what my priorities were in training, and Grant was doing two a days in high school, just one day a week on Tuesdays. And Grant knew that he knew my firm belief in tempo and sub-tempo running and other phases that were very, very important. And now, of course, with Ingebrigtsen coming out with this double T thing that's all the rage now, granted, that's part of the training, but lactate testing and threshold training has always been a part of Grant Fisher's training. It's not new to him. And so we laid that out. And the way I do everything was I wrote down the time for the final in the 5K, and that's the goal. August 10th. And then I wrote down the prelim, and then I wrote down the 10,000, August 2nd. And then I work backwards from there. This is your goal. These three things are your goal. Those, one's a defensive race, the middle one, the prelim, but these are two offensive races. We want to play offense in these races. So then from there, I go stepwise back and say, before you line up for the 10, you need X amount of sessions. Well, I've already said it somewhere else. So I'll tell you, my brain says you need 6 sessions and 6 sessions only of raw speed work. I don't believe in raw speed work very much, by the way. So 6 sessions. So now the 10 is there, and now I work backwards and insert the speed sessions back to whatever date you want to say. And then we get close to the trials because we couldn't get all the speed in before the trials happened. So we did a couple sessions before the trials. Not many, but a couple. But it's my belief you have to have that. And then also with VO2 max, minimum of 6, maximum of 8 sessions. So I start inserting VO2 max in, and I work back from the goal, and I just work back into the calendar overall. And then there's other elements of training, the long runs, the tempo runs, the sub threshold runs. We have all of those things that we put in from the end goal all the way back to tomorrow is day 1 of the plan. And there were breaks in there. We put in, he was socializing or getting a break around Christmas time to visit family. We put travel in there. We knew everything, where you're going to be, if you're going to live at altitude, how many days you're going to be at altitude, how many days you're going to be out of altitude. All of that got put on the calendar. And then it took me a week to put in every one of the workouts. And then I sat down with Grant really for maybe 4 to 12 weeks at a time. And we sat down face to face because, I was going to training. So in between the sessions, sat down face to face and said, okay, read this. This is what we're going to do. Do you like it? And then we would talk about it. Oh, I got to make an appearance at NXN. Okay, we're going to be in Portland for that, or we're going to be we're going to be on the Nike track then. We're going to adjust the workout, the style, because we're going to be in the rain most likely, and we were. But, you got to think about this, and then you add all of that up, and then Grant never did one workout this year that he didn't agree with. And I wholeheartedly believe that at your level, Brad, the level that you ended up, professional level, you have to know what you're going to do, and you have to believe that that's what's going to get Brad onto the podium. And in Grant's case, he signed off on weeks at a time, 12 weeks at a time. And then I really only gave him the time up to the 10 because he had to run 27 minutes there. And so, or 26:59, whatever.
That's an event, people. It's called the 10 in, I believe, April or something in Southern California.
That's correct, March.
Yeah, and that was a very important race because people probably don't understand this. When you see the Olympic 10,000 meter race and there's 29 guys on the track or 34, they qualified by running the Olympic standard that you have to run before the Olympics. Otherwise, you can't get on the track. So
Right.
he had really 3 important events because you got to go make the team in June. It's tough being an American. You got to run that standard, make the team, and then you have the Olympic final. This is unique to the 10,000 meters. It's so long distance, they don't make athletes run 2 of them at the Olympics. And in every other event on the track, they run 2 or 3 heats, semifinals, finals. So he had this race called the 10 in Southern California that you're referring to.
Right. And so at the 10, the only thing that mattered was break 27. We could have run 26:59.99 and we'd have been happy.
Yeah, or
We could
come
have run
12th place and still be happy.
It doesn't
Right.
matter. You need to break 27. And so really I gave him that block, and then that block of training lasted all the way through the 10. Then I gave him the block through the Olympic trials. And then I gave him the block to August 10th. And then on August 11th, I gave him the block to the end of the season now. So he has that. That wasn't part of the original plan, by the way. That I did in Paris.
After celebrating and he's got medals around his neck, now you're going to give him another block. Here you go, dude.
I did tell him to
Your
enjoy the
parties
night.
are over. Yeah. Hope you had fun last night. Here's your block.
Exactly.
5
That is
times,
almost
1
exactly
mile.
it.
Yeah.
I did tell him in Paris, I said, I'm going to leave you alone for a week. The first 5 days were easy. I'm going to leave you alone for a week. That lasted about 30 hours. I had to call and check in if his body was beat up or,
Mm.
So anyway, that's the way that worked. And then you asked, did we change it? And the answer is no. So we adjusted the day. We never adjusted the premise of the day. So if we were doing VO2 max on this day on March 11th, we did a VO2 max. Now, did we do 8 times 1,000 or 6 times 1,000 or 10 times 1,000? That could have changed. But the idea behind the day didn't change. And it didn't change because we needed that element to be satisfied that day, or certainly in that block, to get to our end goal. And so those things didn't change. And
Well, that's remarkable, man, because even at the elite level, we see guys going down with injury, illness, setbacks. And so you're saying that he never once had the sniffles or a fever or a sore left foot that required you guys to go back to the drawing board.
and that is the essence of Grant Fisher. He takes care of everything. He takes care of sleep. He takes care of massage. He takes care of his health. He makes his food at home. I mean, that is the essence of Grant. He does all of those things so that he's ready for all the sessions. And you're right. He did not get sick. He did not get injured. He did not miss a session. So, here and there we adjusted. I don't want to say it was completely perfect, but there were some things, life got in the way. There was some travel, some family travel that happened. We did have to adjust the week, or if, I don't know, if something happened where, he was asked to come to a presentation someplace, maybe we flew into a location and changed that. But the premise of the workouts, they stayed the same, and kudos to Grant for taking care of everything else. He never, ever, ever had a hiccup. Not one hiccup.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you get 2 bronze medals, I guess.
I guess, yes.
So, I mean, just to jump in about overuse injuries, they are a huge concern all the way up to the highest level and the top performers. So, how do you guys navigate that constant risk and that constant thing hanging over?
Well, I coach a couple things, but one thing specifically on every day of every week. I coach distance, speed, and surface. So I don't let my guys run on sidewalks ever. Nay, never. I mean, you talked about Park City. One of the greatest things about Park City is he never runs on a hard surface. He runs on dirt and trails and all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. Now, granted, if it's really rainy or something like that, and we have to run on a bike trail at some point, then we will. But in general, Park City's full of soft surfaces. And you have to coach that, because that's one of those things that you don't know until it's too late. You don't know until it's 6 weeks after when you should have adjusted it. So you can't make that mistake. You've got to coach that. And with my younger athletes, I have to say it every single day. It's like a broken record. You have to tell them, you're not going to run any faster than this. You're not going to run on this surface, and you're going to run this distance. And that's it. You have to do those things. And, you cannot get faster if you're sitting on the sideline. You have to be injury free. Of all the coaching stuff, you've got to stay injury free.
You think hard surface is one of the big factors of overuse injury?
Well, overuse technically is overusing the body, and you can do that. I was a mileage maniac guy. So, if I was vertical, I trained. And so overuse comes on by, just abusing your body and not allowing it to recover. That's the bottom line. And if you can do 130 miles a week or 120 a week, and I can only do 90, and I get overuse injuries at 100, that's my body. I got to keep it under 100, right? Mm-hmm. And you might be a guy, Dathan was a guy that dude could run some mileage. He's so efficient across the ground. Dathan Ritzenheim, sorry. He's so efficient across the ground that he could manage a higher load mileage wise than many other runners. And overuse is just your body is not recovering. So I don't care if it's too much load, too much volume, or hard surface. It does not matter. You didn't do it right. Fix that.
So maybe tell us about Grant's season where he was busted up and he couldn't make the world team. That was in 23. He missed the big events due to injury, or 22. I can't remember.
It was last year, a year ago,
Right.
right now. I wasn't coaching him at the time, so I don't know. When Grant is being coached by somebody else or anybody, any of my athletes, I don't care. If he's being coached by somebody else, I'm a fan at that point. I go to the meets, I yell, I scream, I support him. I'm a fan. So I don't know what caused the issues last year at all. Um, I wasn't talking to Grant weekly, daily, etc. I'm just a fan at that point. And so I can't really answer your question. I don't know.
I guess that was perhaps a driving factor in him exploring the opportunity for a change and a different approach.
It might have been. I think he has made comment that that was part of it. But also, I do know he's super intelligent. And so I believe he really enjoyed after he left. So in high school, we did a bunch of scientific training. And then he left and he got away from that. And I think, for Grant, it was like normal. Like, this isn't this how everyone trains, because that's what he learned, right? So that was not like an abnormal thing. That was part of our coaching. That's part of my coaching.
Mm.
And so he learned that system and then he got away from it, got away from it. I think he wanted a little more control over that and a little more scientific based stuff. And so that was probably another reason he came back.
So I'm gonna since we're buddies, I'm gonna tease you a little here with this question. So you're sitting in a cafe with this guy, Grant Fisher, who's the number one American distance runner, and you decide to go in the direction that you went. Did you feel any nervousness or pressure that you're writing up a schedule and the United States of America is looking over your shoulder saying, "Come on, dude, we need we need to break this medal drought in the distance events."
Oh, there's no pressure at all, Brad. And my good friends like you certainly would never call or text me and go, Scan, don't screw this up. Hey, Scan, this is great. Don't mess up.
We're
Yeah,
rooting
no.
for you. We're gonna throw you in the garbage can if anything goes wrong. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, of course there's pressure to do that. And in my brain, I think, okay, this is going to work. And in my brain, I think we should be good on this path. Um, and Grant's influence on that, you have a coach, me, and I say, okay, let's do X amount of volume at this level. And in my brain, I always say that's what athletes can manage. Like in my high school athletes, I do everything on 24 minutes, just FYI. So I'll say 24 minutes of work today. Well, in Grant's case, he would come back and say, I'm going to go, I would like to do 30 minutes at that same level of intensity. And I'm like, wow. I mean, in my brain, that's like a red flag. Hey, wait a minute. We got to be careful here. But you know what? Grant knows his body and he was right. And so, yeah, I definitely had some pundits telling me that I didn't know what I was doing. But coaching wise, I did know what I was doing. And then the only question was, can you apply that to a new target? Like I
Mm.
applied it to the high school Grant Fisher target, and
Right.
then I applied that to the professional athlete target. And I certainly, I went out and asked guys like you, Brad. Brad, what's your experience with it? What's your experience moving 24 to 30 minutes of this kind of volume?
Mm.
Tell me your experience, Brad. And then and I know you, I know a bunch of fast U's. So I made some phone calls and said, hey, what is your thought on this? And and the tempo idea didn't change. Maybe the volume did. Maybe the rest went from 1 to 2 minutes or something like that. But I had to learn a little bit and adjust a little bit because he's different than he used to be. That's for sure.
Mm.
And
A little
also,
faster,
huh?
a little faster,
A little faster,
a little faster in high school.
a little faster in high school. But yeah, there was some. Yes, I, we're very close in training. Like as in, can you run a 4:38 mile? Now 4:36. I mean, it's nothing if you think about it. But I wanted to make sure those adjustments were right, and there was pressure. There was validation at the 10. He jogged in
Mm.
that race, by the way. He was jogging. You go back and watch him. He was never in trouble in the 10, which was planned for, but then it worked. Then there's validation. Okay, we're on the right track, right?
And did he cross the line with that sentiment that this was a breeze to break
Well,
27?
we can't say that in front of everybody, but
Yeah.
I want to know. Those are my eyes. My eyes are telling me this is what's going on inside your body. Am I right? And then we have a conversation about it. And and then he backed it up with a 2 mile American record, which was great.
Mm.
Or indoor, we did a 2 mile American record before the 10. That was great. And then, we made a few adjustments into the intensity of certain workouts before trials. I just told you that a second ago.
Hmm.
But yeah, there definitely is some pressure and there is some validation and relief. Part of my emotional output at the trials. I mean, if you watch the trials, I'm emotional. I'm crying. I'm like, oh my goodness, it worked, Brad, it worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, all this
Incredible.
emotion is just going crazy in my
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
So
Um, Tell us about Paris. So the trials were in late June, and then you had that final build of incredibly important training, and then you flew over there and had some action going on in Paris. What was that like for you as the coach, and what was the the routine like for the duration of the Olympics? Because I know we're going to get that spoiler how he took off and went to the mountains, which is super interesting for uh, an athlete doing that during the Olympics.
yeah, well, so the Olympics started before the television's camera started rolling. So we were in St. Moritz training in altitude to get both the altitude adjustment up there and the altitude benefit up there, and also get adjusted to the time zone. So we wanted to do that so that we were all good to go. And when Paris came, it would just be another workday, basically. So we went to St. Moritz and trained for a couple of weeks, and it was
Mm,
just basically him and I, and it was very quiet, business-like. It was great. There's a lot of other athletes up there, but
mm,
when it was time to work, it was just he and I on the track or wherever we were working that day. So that was great. And then we skipped the Olympics are a huge show. And so because Grant's sole focus was getting on the podium, it really was work. And so we skipped all of the hoopla. We had set up in advance a hotel room so we could be guaranteed an air conditioner and guaranteed good sleep. So Grant did not, he did have a location to stay in the village, but he did not do that. He stayed in a hotel room outside of the village and with a good air conditioner, and it was great. And so we got to Paris right before the 10,000. And based on that other stuff we talked about earlier, when you come off of altitude, you lose a little bit of the benefit. And you want to know, and we test this, does day one, how much do you lose on day one? How much do you lose on day two? How much do you lose on day three? How does this work? And what day do you need to come in to maximize both the travel, getting over the travel,
mm,
and not losing the benefit of altitude?
mm.
So we train that and we know that. And so we went very late into the Olympics, came in, did pre-meet on the track to see how it was going to go. The track there was phenomenally fast. We were on the track the day before the 10,000. The actual track, it was the only day you were allowed on. So we made
Mm.
sure we were there that day. And then boom, the 10 goes off. And the race plan for the 10 there was never 1 second in that race where the idea wasn't to be in the top three, hang out in the top three. And yeah, he stumbled. Yeah, he got pushed. Yeah, he got clipped. But you could see in his eyes, and he's so good at this. You can see in his eyes what he wanted to get done. And so the 10,000 goes off. And, for a little while there, I thought he was going to crank through the whole field. I don't know if you knew that, but as you watch the 10,000 with 80 meters to go, his velocity was so good. And
Hmm.
then, that move stalled later with about 30 meters to go. And then somebody clipped him. Our guy clipped him at the end. But, he got on the podium and he looked really good doing it. I wish that race was faster. So
Mm.
26:43 is great, but honestly, another 15 seconds faster would have been more beneficial to Grant. Less traffic in the end,
Yeah.
but the goal is the goal, and he achieved it.
Was there a complex strategy before the race, or did you have like a few different scenarios that you discussed and how would he react to a slow pace, a super fast pace, or what have you?
So we do have a primary race plan. There's no doubt about it.
Kick some ass, get on the podium.
And so we have a primary race plan, and turns out in the 10, that is exactly what happened.
Mm,
We kind of assumed there would be a little bit of teamwork going on with a couple of the other teams that had pretty heavy hitters in the race. That happened. And then we assumed, well, the move in the 10 was about 120 to 130 out. That might have been a little bit early, to be truthful. I mean,
mm,
if we moved that back to 80, maybe he would have, gotten even higher on the podium. But it's a race. There's other guys that want to win as well. So no one's handing out the medals and going, you could take this one. I don't want this one. It's very difficult. So you do your best to give a strategy A, but we talked very little in the 10 about strategy B because we figured strategy A would be right, and it
mm,
was.
mhm.
Yeah. Now the 5,000 was different though, Brad. That
So
that was definitely not necessarily strategy A, just so you know.
yeah, I guess the longer it is, I mean, you can have all the strategies in your back pocket in the 10, but if you can't hold with the pace, none of it matters. And then, of course, you have to react anyway. Like you mentioned, going at 120. In hindsight, it would have been better to go at 80. But in hindsight, there was 27 people that didn't win a medal and three people that did. So,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
worked out beautifully. So after that incredible high of winning the bronze medal, it was soon back to work. Take us through the ensuing days of the Olympics.
So the plan was we what we didn't plan for was the mayhem. We didn't go for, hey, when you do this, there's going to be mayhem. We didn't plan for that at all.
Wow.
So the media right away. The race was late at night to start with, and
Mm,
then media and drug testing and warming down took us out of the stadium probably at 1 in the morning after the 10,000. So we were there for hours, hours and hours. And the family was waiting outside. The stadium had closed, and we couldn't even get out of the stadium because it was completely locked. And the Fisher family was waiting outside. My kids were there. They were waiting outside. And it was pitch dark, and there's nobody there except the Fisher family, which was
ah,
great because we had not celebrated at all. It had been all work and all business and all media. And so we had not celebrated at all. And then when we were leaving the stadium, I got several text messages that said, "You guys can't leave." We were going to leave at 9 a.m. We had a flight booked. We had flight, train. I mean, you name it. We had all this transportation booked. And yeah, and somebody caught wind of it, and they started texting me saying, "You're not doing that because the award ceremony is tomorrow night, and he will be there." And so
Oh,
we
so this is
changed
like
that.
Olympic officials, USATF officials. They're
That's
literally
right.
telling you you ain't going back to your vacation
Yeah,
condo.
nice try on the planning phase, but we just changed that for you. So then we wound up going home. We celebrated just for a few minutes, like maybe a half an hour at the most, and took a few pictures and said goodbye. And then Grant and I went back, and we honestly had to unravel everything. So all of the travel had to be redone. And he's on a computer, I'm on a computer trying to book travel for the 24 hours later, and there's nothing available, and the times don't work, the
Oof.
trains don't work, and so the cars don't work. I mean, it was so at 3:30 that morning, I said, Grant, you're going to bed. We'll figure it out tomorrow. And then I slept for 2 hours, and I
Oh,
got up and ran. And I was like, there's no way he's up. He's got to be sleeping. Within an hour, he had texted me and said, "All right, I've looked at this. Oh, I know he didn't sleep either."
ah,
So, but the celebration about going to the podium and the award stand, and I mean representing the United States, and the culmination of a dream that probably started when he was in high school. I mean, it was just an amazing, amazing thing to witness. Just how happy he was, because, it doesn't happen to everybody. It's not a normal thing. And so I did want him to digest that a little bit, but in reality, it probably didn't get digested until after
Mm.
the 5,000 was over, because we got right back to work on the 5,000 strategy almost immediately. So yeah, he did go back up to altitude. There is a significant benefit to going to altitude just for a short period of time. And so he went back up to altitude and came back down for the 5 prelim.
Uh, Describe the benefits of living and training at altitude from the Hermetica perspective, as well as whatever else you got to say about that for the listener that might not be familiar. We hear all about it, but maybe not the scientific detail of what's going on when the body's existing at altitude as an athlete.
The primary benefit is that your body demands the same amount of oxygen that it does at lower altitude, but your body cannot circulate that oxygen into your body. And so it builds additional red blood cells. That is the simplest thing I can tell you, that your body produces additional red blood cells. And now you're carrying along a larger volume of red blood cells. Now, if you have a larger volume of red blood cells, they can circulate faster or with less heartbeats, because you have a larger volume of blood to carry oxygen when you go back down to sea level. And so the benefit of living up there is your body, and it takes your body weeks to do this. To get the full benefit of altitude, it takes your body weeks of living at altitude. And we know how many days that is for Grant, because we test that. And likewise, your body reacts instantly to being at altitude. So if you go to altitude right now, Brad, your body is way smarter than you and I, and it immediately says, you just changed something. I am going to fix it. And your body starts making additional red blood cells right away. And so, there's a super, super reaction immediately. And then that reaction kind of goes down over time until you're fully transition to altitude acclimation.
Mm-hmm.
And you should know, it depends on what level athlete you are, but you should know what those things are so that you can time out your performance, your peak performance against all of those things. You should know that. And
So when you're up at altitude, you're acclimating for a few weeks. You start to build more red blood cells, a higher hematocrit in the blood value. And then how long does that stick around when you return to sea level? And like you said, the body's smart. It realizes it does not need the extra oxygenated blood because there's plenty of air in Paris versus St. Moritz. So how long does the effects last before you start to lose the altitude benefit?
you lose the altitude benefit on moment number 1 in
Mm,
Paris right
okay.
away.
Okay.
It's just that you don't lose all of it on moment number 1.
Mm,
And it's different for every person. But, it's generally a good guideline. And the scientists will all tell you that by 14 days, it's gone. So
mm.
if you're going to go to altitude and you're going to race in a month after coming down, there's really not any benefit at that point of the altitude. Now, maybe there's a training benefit, there's a weather benefit, there's a resting benefit, maybe there's something else, but just for the blood values, that benefit is gone. So, and
But
it's individual, but by 14 days, it's gone. It might be gone by 11 days in your case. I don't know, but it's not in the first week. I know some guys that would race on the 9th day, and they found that out by training and by testing things. But we don't race that late, or Grant doesn't race that late.
right, so you came down right before the 10,000 final, what a day or two or three
Right.
before that.
Yep.
So you still had plenty of altitude driven benefit.
Oh, plenty. Yes.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with the 5K, except he had to run a prelim. So
Oh yeah.
he came down the day before the prelim. Now,
Hmm.
typically you'd say, wait a minute, the travel now is too great. But we knew the prelim would be defensive, right? It wouldn't be we need you at 100%. We just need you to, be able to run a quarter. That's it. And so he came down right before the prelim.
Right. Defensive, you mean you have to come in the top six or whatever it was. And so that's all he's concerned about, not blowing his entire energy, but just running fast enough to qualify for the final.
Yeah, defensive means that there were 8 slots given away. And so there was no difference between 1 and 8 because
Right.
all you did is qualify. So
Something
you
a
can look
lot of
around.
athletes forget that,
Well, they can
unfortunately.
forget it. I don't care. As long as Grant doesn't forget it, I don't
Right.
care what the other athletes think.
Yeah.
But you can see late in the race, they're counting. They're
Hmm.
looking around and you say, why are they looking around? They're counting. They're counting heads. And they
Yeah.
should be counting heads. The best athletes count heads. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was a defensive strategy. Make sure you're in the top 8. It didn't matter if you won or not, and you didn't win. And
So
who,
then the final is what, 2 more days later?
right? We had 2 days
So
in
you're
training.
hanging out in your air-conditioned hotel room in Paris.
Yeah, it's a very smart thing, Brad, to cover all the bases.
Yeah, I've actually, you've probably heard the criticism directed at athletes who aren't getting the full Olympic experience. What do you mean Grant missed the boat ride in the opening ceremonies? But I don't
In
think
the rain.
people, we ask so much of these athletes and we demand that they perform, and then we also want to cast judgment on things like grabbing a hotel room with air conditioning rather than some raucous Olympic village by the end of the meet. I mean, the 10,000 kick things off, but then the 5,000, there's probably guys in the village staying up all night partying because their events are over.
You're right about that. And even though the 10,000 was first, it wasn't the first Olympic event. It was probably a solid weekend.
Mm, yeah.
There were other teams that were completely done.
Yeah.
And do
Swimming,
they care?
gymnastics,
Exactly.
those rowdy swimmers. They were the
It's
rowdiest college
rowdy.
athletes. I know
You
that.
rowdy swimmer, you. And you're right about that. Those guys are done. And so, what's their motivation to go to bed by 9 and get a full night's rest? Zero. They're now on party mode. And so, you don't want to. Well, I mean, the Olympics is a celebration. So,
Yeah.
I'm not judging them for partying, but I also don't want Grant in the same hall or in the same, certainly not in the same room, not in the same hall, not even the same building of a party, a rager. Why would you do that? He still has work to do. And, I don't want him standing on a boat for those opening ceremonies. They're like 8 and 9 hour
Mm,
commitments. You see them for 15 minutes on TV.
mm,
They line up at 2 in the afternoon. I mean, it's a full on day.
yeah.
And that just drains energy. And you need all of your energy for the 10,000. So that wasn't going to happen.
Okay, so we qualified safely, and then take us to the 5,000 final, which was a huge, long expected. Ingebrigtsen's in there trying to avenge his dramatic defeat in the 1500, and now we have seemingly a lot more tactics and strategy that are potentially going to come into the mix.
Yes, except plan A for the 5,000 was for that to be an honest race. I really thought that race was going to go 12:48. That was my prediction. Like I told you that I told Grant they were going to go run 26:45 in the 10. I did say that the day before. I said, you're going to run 26:45. No problem. Tomorrow, plan on running fast. This is the way it's going to go. My prediction for the 5 was 12:48. I was totally wrong. They sat around. I don't understand why they sat around because some of the guys in the field needed that field to be spread out a lot more than it was. But plan A was that it was going to go faster. It did not. But the end of plan A was to be patient and watch the initial moves and cover the initial moves, which started about 1,000 to go. Just, if you started to watch or watch the end of that race. So cover the initial moves and watch the initial moves and do not move until very, very, very late. And the move on that was 60 meters. So we moved it from 120 because he didn't get to the finish line in the 10. We moved it to 60. And really, like I told you at the beginning of the show, it should have been 70 because he was still increasing speed. So that's a coach mistake. I'll correct it. But the move was at 60 meters. And I told him, be patient. it will open up on the home stretch. It will open up. The field will spread apart, and when it does, boom, take advantage of it. And 60 meters out, that's when the go point was for the 5. And he wasn't even in the frame of camera. Did you watch it on
Oh
TV?
yeah, many
Yeah,
times.
he's
Yeah,
not even there. I
yeah,
mean, there's no Grant Fisher, none.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
he's out of the the announcer. They don't even know his name. He's out of the camera frame. I mean, everything is dead, and then all of a sudden, he's not. And that whatever happened at the end of the 5, I can say as much as I want. I can tell you everything I want. It doesn't matter. What matters is what went through Grant Fisher's brain, and that guy decided to get a medal in the 5 with 9 seconds to go. We planned for the last 10 seconds of that race for a long, long time, and he's the one that he wanted a medal, and he got one.
How did you know, or had so much belief that was going to how go out that way, where the space would open up on the last lap and so forth?
The space opening up on the last lap wasn't that difficult to predict. The place I was wrong was the first 4K. I was wrong there. I thought those guys would run faster because some of them needed to run faster. If that race would have been faster throughout, the medal positions would have changed. I don't know how, but it would have changed, and they did not do that. They let Jacob really just control the last 1,000, and that became a 1,000-meter race. He ran 2:19, but Grant ran 2:21 at the end of that race. So, I mean, it's a phenomenal 1,000 without the 4,000 to get there. And
Right, yeah.
my prediction was wrong on the first 4,000 and right on the last. And that honestly is just from watching Olympic championship racing, honestly, is just, you want to give the athlete a movie so that when it comes on, they know. I've seen this before. And so in practice, the last week before that, we ran through the last 10 seconds of that race. I don't know how many times, but let's round it off at 20. Let's round it off at 20. So we went through that, and as he's running, I'm talking out loudly on the track, saying what's happening. I want him to see this. I want him to visualize this, and so that he can see what's going to happen and what he's going to do. How will he react to this movie? And we did it often. And fortunately, that's exactly what happened. So I've been wrong about race plans. I was wrong about the first 4,000. There always has to be a plan B. Grant is very good at adjusting if he needs to. In this case, he didn't really adjust too much.
Was there ever a scenario where he would be an instigator? Like if they're running 14-minute pace, would you send him off, or would that be no go?
Not at the Olympics. That wasn't part of.
And
Now,
did
now,
did Jakob ask you for advice before the
yeah, no, Jakob
1500?
does.
No,
I
he
know
did not.
him. He trains in Arizona, so
Right,
yeah.
right.
But no, he and I don't share race plans. But but if you look at the trial strategy, go back and look at the 10,000 in the trials. Go back and look at the 5,000 in the trials. Those strategies are different. I don't like to send the kid. I don't like to send Grant to the line with the strategy that he used yesterday. So Brad can go, well, Grant's just going to do this. No, he's not. No, I don't want you to know what he's going to do. And, the trial strategies were completely different than the Olympic strategies, completely.
Right,
And the
you
answer to your
assess the
question is no.
competition and stuff.
Yes. And there's no reason for Grant Fisher to take the lead in the Olympics the first 4,000 meters at all. That his chances of medaling go down in that case. And that wasn't
Makes
my
sense,
job.
man. It makes sense. I'm just shocked
Well,
at some of the strategies carried out. And I think there's possibly just a lack of intense focus on getting on the podium as Grant's stated goal was. And maybe there's athletes there that want to win honorably, as Jakob says, to his discredit on that particular quote. But the podcaster said the way to race honorably is to win the gold. I mean, to win a medal. But it gets tricky out there on the track when you have to think on your feet and all that.
and decisions are made a thousandth of a second, a tenth of a second. I mean, and then we talk about those decisions for 20 hours afterward, but you didn't get 20 hours to make that decision. You got 3 steps. And so in the 10,000, the assumption was that Grant Fisher had to be ready to move in 3 steps. That we talked about that for months. It's a 3-step move. And if you're not on it by 3 steps, and if you go back and look at his LA race, he raced an LA 3K,
Mm.
and he was off the move by 7 steps and was never in. It was a 3-step move, and you have to be there for the 3 steps. You have to take those 3 steps. You don't get to decide, I'll cover that later. That's not part of it. And so I think a lot of times, Brad, really, athletes go to the line without a clear picture of
Mm.
what they want at the end. And I think it makes me look like a good coach because I do send athletes to the line. But really, the only reason I'm a good coach is because I coach good athletes. It's true. My athletes make me look great.
Well, I like how you say that Grant takes care of his sleep, his therapies, his other team members that he needs surrounding him, so that he can show up ready to make you look like a great coach. I mean, that's huge.
But it's hugely true. It's just true. That's it. That's all there is to it. So,
So now, man, you've evolved from this anonymous underground mysterious coach. Now you guys are, in a whole different realm, like the chaos that you describe. I'm sure some of that has hit you as well. And what does your future ambition look like with respect to how things have changed from the Paris Olympics?
well, I think it's a little bit ironic or a little bit funny because I just believe I'm a coach. And right now, Brad, if you and I work together, I'm your coach. Now, are you a high school athlete? Are you a college athlete? Are you a professional athlete? But I am named a high school coach. Nobody ever says now I am Grant Fisher's coach, but uh, prior to that, I'm just a coach. And so for me, I have full focus right now on my high school guys that they're doing very well. I
Mm,
expect them to do very well. But I'm a total scatterbrain. When I'm at practice, you can do whatever you want. If it's outside of my athletes running around the track or my athletes doing a workout, honestly, I will totally ignore it. I'm centrally focused on what I'm doing at the time, and right now I've transitioned back to making my high school guys the best high school runners I can,
mm,
and so that's going on. The only other thing that has changed is people want to know, like you, people want to know how in the heck did this all happen, and for a while it was very quiet. Great. Nobody knew that we were working together. It was perfect. And then somewhere around January, somebody made him come out with a statement saying, this
mm,
is what I decided to do. And
mm.
then the attention got put on me, but really, me and the system, but really, that's kind of easy to ignore when I'm face to face with an athlete at practice. I just don't have that in my brain at all.
Mhm.
I guess I'm able to um, keep all of those thoughts away. And maybe there's pressure and anxiety that somebody wants to put on me. But the real pressure and anxiety comes from me wanting to do the best for you, Brad, today in our workout today. And so with all of the expectations and or all of the things somebody else wants me to believe, it's really kind of living in the moment for me. I'm a high school
Mm.
coach again right now. I was at practice 5 hours after I landed from Paris, and you're right. Practice was intensely focused on, did you guys go to bed last night? I've never asked Grant, did you go to bed last night? It's a totally different game, right? Did you eat breakfast? I mean, you need some carbohydrates after the workout. You have to eat. It's a completely different ball game. You're training them on everything now. So
And I suppose you're getting a broad spectrum of ability level, commitment level. How do you face that um, coming from working with the most focused and talented athlete that the country has seen in many years, and now you're going to a general population of kids that have some enthusiasm to run, but who knows if they're going to, align with everything that you're coaching.
Yeah, so I like to mirror your motivation, Brad. So if you're ready to run every day, I'll give you runs every day. But if you're only coming to practice 3 days a week, I coach you 3 days a week. I'm not going to come to you and say, add. I don't do that. You're going to come to me and say, I want more. And if you do, Brad, I'm going to give you more. So if you come to me and say, hey, what's the benefit of massage? I'm going to give you massage, and I'm going to make sure you go to a good person for that kind of recovery. And if you say, hey, I ate a bag of Lay's chips right before workout, and then you threw up, I'm not going to say, hey, or do you feel sick? I'm just going to say, how did that feel? Maybe you shouldn't eat the bag of chips right before practice, but they do that, Brad, and they need to learn from that. And so really, I kind of mimic and I respond back to what they bring to me. And I have some really aggressive high school guys right now. They're coming to me with a lot of motivation. I want to do this. And it's a group of them. It's not one.
Wow.
I want to do this. And this is the most aggressive I've ever trained a high school group before in my life. I've never been this aggressive with kids, and they're responding to it. They want it. So to answer your question, I get some kids that just want to participate. I participate in coaching. I also have some kids that want to excel, and I excel in coaching. So I just kind of try to mirror that.
That's nice. That's probably good advice for all parents listening out there too, is just kind of mirror your kids, natural motivation rather than try to grind it to something that's unnatural.
Yeah, the phase of life is funny because a seventh or eighth grade boy, they just haven't flipped the switch to say they want to be a good athlete yet. Some of them have, but most of them have not. And that switch gets flipped somewhere around freshman or sophomore year in most cases. So I never take on a boy unless they're the spring of their eighth grade year. That's when I took on Grant, even though,
Wow.
I ran with his dad in college.
Mm,
His mom was an athlete in college. You would think, hey, this kid's got an upside to him. I don't care. I'm not coaching him I didn't coach him until his eighth grade year, even though I worked with his dad every day, right? His dad and I are in the same office together. I'm going to Grant's soccer games. I watched Grant in karate. I went to his, youth activities. I'm not going to tell him he's going to run. I just didn't.
right. And you feel that the timing is important because it's kind of early to make that sincere commitment to long distance training when you're in middle school or what have you.
It's really a motivation thing. So, not that I'm suggesting anyone call me, but if you think about it, pretty much every time a parent has called me and said, will you coach my eighth grade son? I've said
Mm,
no. I've
mm.
said no. But every time an eighth grader has said, will you coach me? I've said yes.
Wow, that's a profound. I think that's a incredible closing statement there, man, for everyone to reflect upon. That's like the secret of parenting right there. And for kids listening, that's it. It's got to come from within.
Yeah, I've had so many people ask me, where do you get all these fast guys? And I'm like, well, I make fast guys. I don't get fast guys. I don't want to manage a sub 4 miler. I want to make you a sub 4
Right.
miler. I'm
Yeah.
a coach. I'm not a manager. Anyone can manage. I mean, so anyway, that's yeah. So before you end though, please don't send 1,000 phone calls my way, please.
Well, you're a hard guy to find. I kept digging around, and do you like to shout out? Do you have like a Instagram or something where people might be able to connect in some way?
I have a Twitter or X that I
Mm,
post on every day. My rule for that, because my high school kids back in the Grant Fisher days made me get this social media, which I swore off. I hated social media. I still hate it now.
yeah.
But I said, okay, I'll start posting. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to post one motivational thing every day. And that's it. I'm only going to post one time at 7 a.m., one motivational thing. And if you read my post, they're all motivational things for high school athletes. And that's all.
Nice.
And my post is, what is it? At Real Iron Mike. Do you have it?
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't make that up. my high school at runners made me a whole social media thing. And I had the little egg there for about 6 months, and they were like, you have to put a picture up. But anyway, my whole thing is I only want to change one person, Brad. So if I
Yeah,
change you today and you're a little better at what you do
yeah,
tomorrow, I'm good with it. And if I touch one kid with my post today, then I win. I worked. It worked for me, and I win. And I share this only because we don't know. You don't know, Brad. I talk to young youth and high school kids all the time. One of them, and I don't know if I'll talk to them or not, or they're going to come from Texas, or they're going to come from New Jersey. I don't know. One
right.
of them is going to be an Olympian, but I don't know which one. But they're all the same. Grant was in eighth grade once too, and
Yeah.
he was not running 4:15 for the 10,000, 4:15 pace for 10,000. He just wasn't. And so you don't know who you're talking to, Brad. And so for me, I want to motivate them all,
Yeah,
one at a time.
that's a great tip. I remember my seventh grade teacher, we were getting too unruly in science class, and he lost his temper, and he got up there and he says, "Look, you guys talk about sports, and you goof around too much, and none of you are ever going to make it to the professional level in sports, so you better pay attention in class." And he goes, "I know what I'm talking about because I made it to double A baseball before I messed up my shoulder." And I was thinking in seventh grade, this guy cannot say that to us because he doesn't know. And so I used to say to the kids that I coach, like, can anyone tell you that you're not going to make the NBA right now? No, they're
No.
wrong. They do not know for sure that you're not going to make the NBA. I can guess since your parents are 5'7" and 5'3". However, I want to put that thought out there that, everyone needs to have the open road ahead and believe in themselves and not put limits down.
And you should. And my post from about a week ago was simply this: high school kids don't know what they can't do. Please don't tell them.
That's great. I love
It's
it.
honestly, you
Yeah.
cannot make that statement. And I
Yeah.
I think it was wrong for that. Well, it was wrong in your case, Brad. You made it to the professional level.
That's right. I proved him wrong. He was my driving force. I'm grateful for him and the college coaches that ruined my running career to drive me to triathlon. It's all comes out good. It's all stepping stones.
All right.
Mike Scannell, people, what a show. Thank you so much for taking us behind the scenes at the Olympics and all the things behind it. Best of luck to you, Grant Fisher, and your fast high school runners down there in Arizona, too.
Thank you very much for having me, Brad. It was wonderful to see you smile again and laugh a little bit. It was great. I really
Oh,
had.
I mean, I haven't seen you and we haven't connected in a while, but I tell your story about being on the police force in Tucson almost once a month because it's the funniest thing I've ever heard about. I mean, if you wouldn't mind sharing, like, sometimes there's a foot pursuit. So people were talking about one of the great, national level collegiate distance runners, and I think you surprised some criminals. Is that what I remember from the story?
You promised we would not talk about stories, but I'll tell you one.
Okay, we love it.
Yes, I there was never a foot chase I didn't want to be involved in. And my rule of thumb was I didn't get paid to fight. So I never fought with anybody I didn't mace. And so I would just catch them and run by them, and I would mace them first, and then I would fight. And that happened many a times. And in one case, my most prolific foot pursuit was an NFL player that he
Oh,
ran really fast for 100, but I'm
uh-huh.
a distance runner. And so eventually I won. And I didn't know he was a football player until,
Till you
later,
booked them.
until I booked him. That's right.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, too funny.
Crime doesn't pay, people,
Yeah.
especially when you got a fast, long distance runner chasing you down.
That was a long time ago, Brad. Long time ago. Anyway,
Thanks for listening, everybody. That's a wrap.
okay. See ya.